11:35 here on the Big Show clock, being brought to you by Hertz Real Estate Services, farmland auction, brokerage, and evaluations. Big thank you to Hertz Real Estate Services. On the telephone line right now, Mike Steenhoek still with us. Mike with the Soybean Transportation Organization, Soy Transportation Organization, our transportation specialist. And Mike, we're talking about a port fee that has been proposed to collect from cargo ships that have been built or have a company that has holdings by Chinese firms. And what I want to ask you here real quick is where are we with this? Is it just a proposal now? Is it scheduled to be taken up soon? And will normally you collect a fee, you pass that along to whoever's shipping, which would be, in the case of soybeans, and you say it would add 39 cents a bushel to the shipping cost for soybeans, probably to be absorbed by the shipper, right? So kind of give me a minute on what the next step is.
Well, it's something that is very much on the impending. I had a prominent U.S. soybean exporter call me and say that he is already not able to get ships to be willing to transport U.S. soybean exports because of the concerns with this impending fee. So this is not something that is way out in the distance. It's something that could be very soon. So it's already having real-world application. And yes, when you have an additional cost in our supply chain, the lesson with agriculture is that those costs are usually not passed on to the customer. They're usually not absorbed by the exporter or the grain handler. They're usually passed on to the farmer in the form of a wider basis or more negative price. So they work their way into a farmer's wallet. So it's one more obstacle to farmer profitability. Obviously, it's a concern for us.
Well, yeah, if you know, for instance, it's going to be 39-cent increase, that, like you say, that's just put on the basis then. I understand that part of it. Is there a comment period, Mike? I mean, is there a deadline imposed on this?
Yeah, so they just had they had a comment period that just concluded. They had a public hearing that earlier this week, and there was a farmer from the American Soybean Association and the Soy Transportation Coalition that testified at that. And so now we're really just trying to spread the word and really try to get people to be concerned about it, because we don't want to see these proposals actually become a reality.
Well, Mike has sent us a link to an article. Can we put that up on our website? Is that okay?
Yeah, I have no concern with that.
Yeah, good. We'll do that. Thanks, Mike. Mike Steenhoek, we'll follow this, and I know you will as well, and we'll check in with you again. So, yeah, that's the latest on a possible port tax. I'll get that over to Nathan, and he can post that, because it's an intense article you might want to take a look at. Brian Hoops with us right now. Let's take a look at the marketplace. Brian, kind of a quiet day in the market so far. What are we awaiting next Monday's report? Is that what we're kind of scooting through this week on?
Hey, Bob. Yeah, it certainly feels like that's exactly what we're doing. That report's going to be a pretty major mover, so it's pretty quiet going into it, and I suspect it will be. Might see some option plays, but people really putting on big positions ahead of that report, I think it's going to be real unlikely, as that report has a potential to move us pretty significantly one way or another. The trade estimates are out as far as quarterly stocks, but also the numbers for planting intentions, and looking at almost the third or fourth largest amount of corn acres to be seeded in history. In fact, we've only planted 95 million or more 2 times in history, and I think maybe we could see that in Monday's report, over 95 million acres of corn being seeded.
Brian, the rumors floating around right now is that the market will make a move to buy soybean acres. I got to tell you, at $10.09, that's not a big incentive to plant soybeans.
It's certainly not, and that's why I think we could see a large amount of corn acres intended to be planted, and not as many soybean acres. So if that is the case, if farmers have that intention, beans are going to have to rally and to buy some of those acres, and they certainly could do that. They've been kind of holding probably better than I think we expected they would through the winter months. We've still seen May beans with a 10 in front of it instead of something in the 9s or mid-9s. That is a little bit of a factor that tells us maybe these beans are finding some fair value here despite the big crops out of South America, and they will, in fact, try and bid for some of those acres during the April timeframe.
Well, every commodity house, every trading firm, every trader out there, Brian, has a number that they're thinking about. What's Midwest Market Solutions number for corn acres, soybean acres?
Yeah, we were looking for a little more than what the trade is expecting as far as corn acres. We're closer to 95 million, and would be the largest that we've planted since going back to 2013. We planted 95.3 million that year, and in 2012 we planted 97.2. So we're closer to that 95 million. I know there's some people even more than that, but soybean acres, I think, do come in quite a bit below what the trade is expecting, at least in this report anyway. Then that June report, we're looking at the final numbers. That'll give us actually what has been seeded. I don't think we'll probably see what we intend to plant is not going to show up of what we actually did plant. They're going to be different things. But we are looking for about 83.7 million acres of soybeans to be seeded. That'd be just a little bit less than the average trade guess. Midwest
Market Solutions. Brian, how can we find out more about you guys?
Yeah, you can reach us online at MidwestMarketSolutions.com, or you can call me directly, 417-501-5132.
This is The Big Show.
We are speaking farm right now at 12:55 on the Big Show clock with Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions. And Brian, let's talk about markets here and grain and soybeans in particular. What's your targets over the next couple of weeks for the December corn, November bean contracts?
Yeah, these targets could change pretty quickly depending upon what we have for acres. But, we should find support on the downside here about 445 where they're currently trading, and again at 442, and a lot of upside resistance around the 457 area. Of course, we've had a lot of opportunities during the month of January, February to make some cash sales or to make some forward sales at some decent levels. So there's been some opportunities out there. Same thing for soybeans during that rally that we had. We anticipated with the big South American crop that November bean prices would come under some pressure. Now, on the downside here, we could find support around the $10 mark, and again at $9.95. If we can get a rally going into the spring time frame, maybe we can get back to $10.30, $10.40 again. And really it gets down to weather, how much of a rally we're able to have. The old saying is, it's not what you plant, it's what you can grow. And even if we plant a lot of corn acres and a little bit of soybean acres, you're still going to have to grow that crop. You're going to have good growing conditions this year to put any type of downside pressure on this market.
Yeah, let's talk about the report coming out, and I believe it's Monday, and it'll be our first real, look at intended acres. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it is our first look at intended planted acres other than what the Outlook Conference had told us. So we're looking at 95 plus million acres, I believe. We've planted 95 million acres only twice in our history, in 2012 and 13. So this could be the most acres we've ever planted since 2013 and 22 or 12 growing seasons. So we're looking for more corn acres. We need those corn acres because our demand has been pretty decent this year for exports and for ethanol usage. For soybeans, we're probably going to plant less acres this year. I think 83.7 million acres. That's going to be down from last year and down a little bit from what we had even 2 years ago. But just 2 years ago, right around 83.6 million is what we planted that year. So I think we're going to try and transition back to more of that rotation where we've been at here recently, and that means those acres for beans and corn move back to 2023 levels or just some small variation of that.
What do you know about wheat? Or I should say, what do you think about wheat?
What do I know about wheat? Well, not a lot, but it is breaking dormancy here in the Southern Plains. It's greening up and looks pretty good in a lot of areas that I've seen. Of course, it could use some moisture, a little bit of rain. Average trade guess is for just a small increase in the overall wheat, around 46.5 million. Now, that would be down from last year. It would be down considerably, about 3 million acres from what we saw 2 years ago. So because of the prices of wheat have not responded very well, we're going to plant less wheat this year compared to several years ago. And spring wheat, just 20 years ago, we were planting nearly 20 million acres of that. It's probably going to be closer to 10 million this year.
Brian, folks want to talk markets with you. How can they get a hold of the folks there at Midwest Market Solutions?
Well, you can find us online at MidwestMarketSolutions.com. Follow us on Twitter at Midwest Markets and at Brian Hoops.